Have you ever noticed? The kinder you are, the more invisible you become. You stay quiet when you should speak. You say yes when every part of you is screaming no. You offer your time, your energy, your patience, your heart hoping, just maybe, that someone will finally see the effort behind your silence. But they don't. And that's the part no one talks about. That kindness, the way you've been taught to express it, often goes unnoticed. Or worse, it becomes expected. The more you give, the less they thank you. The more you shrink to make space for others, the less space they give you in return. You were raised to believe that being nice is a virtue, that if you are kind enough, gentle enough, agreeable enough, life will reward you. People will like you. They will respect you. They will love you. But what if that's not true? What if your kindness isn't earning you love, but eroding your power? What if every moment you bite your tongue, every fake smile you wear, every time you let someone cross your boundary without consequence, you're not being kind, you're disappearing? There's a name for that feeling, the one that lingers after you've helped, supported, sacrificed, and still feel unseen. It's not bitterness, it's not resentment, it's something deeper, a quiet ache. The exhaustion of being good in a world that doesn't notice. And deep down, you wonder, how did it get this way? How did something so beautiful, kindness, become a silent prison? That's what we're going to explore. Not to strip away your softness, but to finally understand why, somewhere along the way, being nice started to hurt. Since childhood, we're told, be good, be polite, don't upset anyone, smile when you're uncomfortable, say thank you even when you feel dismissed, be the bigger person, always. But no one tells you what it costs. No one tells you that, over time, this constant self-editing doesn't make you kind. It makes you easy to erase. Because kindness, when taught as submission, becomes a mask. One you wear so often, you forget there was ever a face beneath it. And the message goes deeper than words. It's in the way teachers praise the quiet student, but overlook the one with questions. It's in the way you were told not to cry, not to complain, not to speak unless spoken to. You weren't just learning manners. You were being trained to disappear. You learned that being liked was safer than being honest. That being pleasant was more important than being respected. That being accepted by anyone, at any cost, was the goal. But here's the truth. What you thought was goodness was fear in disguise. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of confrontation. And the worst part? You didn't choose it. It was conditioned into you, rewarded, reinforced. Every time you kept the peace at your own expense, someone smiled. Someone said, "Good girl, nice kid, easy to work with." You internalized that applause. You mistook obedience for virtue. And so, you stopped asking what you wanted. You started asking, "What do they need from me?" This isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility to see it now. Because the lie wasn't just that being kind would make people love you. The lie was that being kind would keep you safe. But tell me honestly, how safe have you really felt? How many times have you felt invisible in your own life, not because you lacked value, but because you were trained to hide it? This is where the unlearning begins. Where the story starts to change, where you start to remember that being kind doesn't mean being silent, that you don't owe anyone your softness if it comes at the price of your self-respect. You were taught to be nice. Now it's time to learn how to be whole. Machiavelli didn't hate kindness, he just understood something most people ignore. The world rewards power, not politeness. He lived in a time of political chaos, betrayal, and ruthless ambition, and he watched with sharp eyes how the most polite men were often the first to fall, not because they lacked morals, but because they misunderstood the rules of the game. In his most famous work, The Prince, Machiavelli wrote, "Not for the ideal world, but for the real one. The world where people don't always play fair, where appearances matter more than intentions, where strength, not softness, determines survival." He didn't say kindness was useless. He said kindness, when applied without strategy, becomes a weakness others will exploit. Machiavelli knew that people are not always rational. They are moved by fear, by desire, by appearances. And when you lead with only goodness, without awareness of human nature, you give away your power before you even realize you had any. He observed how leaders who tried to be loved by all were quickly betrayed, and those who embraced, respected through fear endured. His message wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. Because being feared, he said, was safer than being loved. If you cannot be both. Now pause for a moment. Let that sink in. Everything you've been taught about being nice, about being agreeable, about winning hearts by pleasing was built for a world that doesn't exist. And here comes Machiavelli, not with softness, but with sharpness. Not to teach you how to hurt, but to remind you how not to be hurt. He didn't walk into your story to turn you cold. He came to show you the cost of warmth in a world that sees warmth as weakness. Imagine this. You stand in a room full of people. You're the kindest one there. You've helped everyone at some point. Listened to their problems, stayed late, said yes when you meant no, and still, they overlook you. Now imagine stepping back, speaking less, smiling when it's real, setting a boundary, and watching how everything changes. That shift, that's what Machiavelli understood. It's not about being cruel, it's about being aware. Because once you stop begging to be liked, you begin to command respect. And that, Machiavelli would say, is where real power begins. Nice people become predictable, and the predictable are always exploited first. Think about it. When someone knows, you'll say yes, even before they ask. What stops them from asking again and again? When they've seen you bend, break, and come running every time they need help, what reason do they have to ever truly value you? You've been there. A friend calls at midnight. She's crying. You pick up, listen, calm her down, reassure her. You cancel your plans the next day to help her move, fix something, cover her shift. She says thank you maybe, then disappears until the next emergency. A colleague forgets a deadline. You cover for him again and again, and soon it's expected, not appreciated, or maybe it's someone you love. You forgive the silence, the neglect, the half-hearted apologies. You tell yourself they're just busy, just overwhelmed, just going through something, but deep down, you know you're making excuses for someone who would never make the same effort for you. That sting, that quiet ache you feel when they don't call back, don't say thank you, don't even notice what you gave up. It's not just pain, it's data. It's a signal that your kindness has been converted into currency, and they've learned exactly how much of you they can take without having to give anything in return. Because manipulation doesn't always look like control. Sometimes it looks like charm, like convenience, like someone who always comes to you but never stays. And the worst part? They're not the villain in their own story. To them, you're the helpful one, the reliable one, the one who never complains. You've trained them to believe that using you is kindness, because you never said it wasn't. That's the trap. When you confuse love with loyalty, when you confuse being needed with being valued, when you think giving endlessly will finally earn you a place in someone's heart. But that's not how it works. People don't respect what they can predict, and they don't cherish what they didn't have to earn. So if you're always available, always agreeable, always giving without limit, you're not showing your strength. You're showing your fear. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of being left behind. Fear that if you stop giving, you'll stop mattering. But what if I told you that the opposite is true? That the moment you stop being predictable, the game changes. The moment you stop answering every text, fixing every problem, softening every blow, you stop being a tool. And you start becoming a person with boundaries, a person with standards, a person who no longer mistakes being needed for being loved. Because real love doesn't require your exhaustion, and real respect doesn't depend on how much of yourself you're willing to lose. You thought kindness would protect you, but in the eyes of the world, it only made you useful, not respected. That's the brutal truth most people never see until it's too late, until they've given everything, until they've been stretched thin, walked over, talked past, until the gratitude fades and all that's left is expectation. Respect isn't born from kindness. It's born from boundaries. People don't respect what is always available. They don't respect what doesn't say no. They don't respect what never demands to be respected. You can be the most generous person in the room and still be dismissed. You can be the one who listens the most, shows up the most, gives the most, and still be forgotten when it matters. Because people don't remember who made things easier. They remember who made them think, who made them pause, who didn't hand over everything without making them earn it. It hurts, doesn't it? To realize that everything you believed about being a good person may have been built on a lie. That kindness, without strength, often becomes a form of emotional servitude. You say yes because you don't want to offend. You overextend because you're afraid of seeming selfish. You tolerate behavior you'd never recommend to anyone else because you've convinced yourself that enduring it somehow makes you virtuous. But it doesn't. It makes you quiet. It makes you tired. It makes you small. And eventually, it makes you resentful. Not because kindness is wrong, but because kindness without self-respect is a slow form of self-erasure. You become invisible in your own life. You become known for what you can give, not for who you are. And when you finally stop giving, the silence is deafening, not because they care, but because they never learned how to see you beyond your usefulness. This is the shift Machiavelli warned about. When kindness is not paired with authority, it becomes background noise. When your actions are driven by fear of being disliked, you become easy to discard. You cannot negotiate your value through sacrifice. You cannot earn respect by being agreeable. Respect comes when you stop making comfort your goal, when you stop measuring your worth by how many people you please, when you stop mistaking being liked for being respected. Because here's the truth, being liked is passive. It requires nothing but compliance. But being respected, that demands clarity, consistency, courage. You won't always be liked when you draw the line, but you will be remembered. And eventually, you will be respected. Not for what you gave up, but for what you stood for. Kindness is not a weakness, but when given to everyone, it becomes self-abandonment. There's a moment quiet, often uncelebrated, when something inside you shifts. When you stop asking, "What do they need from me?" and start asking, "What do I need from myself?" That's where the transformation begins. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with clarity. You begin to see the patterns, the way you've dimmed yourself to make others comfortable, the way you've twisted your needs into silence, the way you've confused self-sacrifice with love. And you ask yourself, what would happen if I stopped? What if I stopped explaining myself to people who never really listened? What if I stopped proving my worth through exhaustion? What if I stopped saying yes out of fear and started saying no from self-respect? This is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming conscious. You start choosing when to give and when not to. You stop offering your time to people who drain it. You stop shrinking in rooms where your presence isn't valued. You stop playing the role of the easy one, the quiet one, the agreeable one. Because being kind doesn't mean being submissive. It means you have the power to harm and choose not to. But that choice must come from strength, not fear. Strength to speak up, to walk away, to not answer when they expect you to disappoint others rather than betray yourself. And slowly, things begin to change. You notice how some people pull back when you stop overgiving. That's not loss. That's clarity. Those who valued you only for your sacrifice were never truly with you. But others will lean in. The ones who recognize your shift, not as rebellion, but as growth. The ones who meet you in your new energy, not because they need you to shrink, but because they've done the work to stand beside you. That's the transformation. From being reactive to being intentional. From needing to be needed to knowing you are already enough. You stop being the one who softens every room and become the one who owns it. And the beauty is your kindness doesn't disappear. It just evolves. It becomes selective, powerful, respected. Because now, it comes from a place no one can take from you. A place that says, I will be kind, but never again at the cost of myself. You said yes because you feared rejection. But now, can you say no without guilt? This is where the real work begins, not outside, but within. Not in what others expect from you, but in what you've come to expect from yourself. There's a voice in you. It's been there for years. The one that says you're only valuable when you're agreeable. That love must be earned. That saying no means being selfish. That standing your ground means pushing people away. But here's the truth. That voice isn't your truth. It's an echo, an old survival pattern, a way you learned to stay safe in a world that didn't always make space for your needs. You weren't born afraid to disappoint. You were trained to be. You were taught that keeping the peace matters more than speaking your truth. That harmony is more important than honesty. That if you just try harder, stay nicer, be smaller, then maybe, just maybe, you'll be chosen. But let me ask you this. Have you ever truly felt chosen? Not for what you do or how much you give, but for who you are. When you're not performing, not pleasing, not hiding. If the answer is no, it's not because you're unlovable. It's because you haven't given yourself permission to stop proving you are. So now, let's sit with the conflict. The part of you that wants to protect your image, to stay likable, to avoid the discomfort of being misunderstood. And the part of you quiet but strong that's asking for more. More honesty. More space. More truth. It hurts, doesn't it? To realize how long you've been abandoning yourself in the name of being good. How many times you've swallowed your needs just to keep someone else comfortable. How often you've traded your peace for their approval. But here's the moment where that pain becomes power. Because now, you see it. You see the cost. And once something is seen clearly, it can no longer control you in the dark. So breathe. Forgive yourself. You weren't wrong for wanting to be loved. You weren't weak for saying yes. You were doing what you were taught to survive. But you're not surviving anymore. You're awakening. And that awakening begins the first time you say no, not from anger, but from alignment. No, I won't stay silent to be liked. No, I won't give what I don't have. No, I won't shrink just to fit someone else's comfort. Because from this place, no becomes not a wall but a doorway. A doorway back to yourself. Being feared is not the goal, but being respected starts with stopping being everyone's comfort zone. You were not born to be convenient. You were not put on this earth to make others feel comfortable at the cost of your own truth. Somewhere along the way, you were taught to soften your edges, quiet your voice, and dim your light, just so others wouldn't feel threatened by your presence. But now you know better. Respect doesn't come from shrinking. It comes from standing. Standing in your values, in your voice, in your worth. There will be people who don't like this version of you, the one that says no, the one that asks for more, the one that refuses to be a background character in her own life. Let them. You were never meant to be universally liked. You were meant to be deeply true. And now, you stand at a threshold, the door between who you've been and who you're becoming. You can go back to over-explaining, back to people-pleasing, back to being predictable, agreeable, available. Or you can step forward, into discomfort, into honesty, into boundaries that feel unfamiliar because they've never been allowed to exist. This is your invitation to power, not the kind that controls others, but the kind that reclaims yourself. To stop over-functioning in relationships where you're the only one trying. To stop saying yes just to avoid the sting of rejection. To stop being soft where you needed to be sovereign. You don't have to become hard. You just have to become real. Because real presence commands a room without asking for permission. And now that you see the pattern, you have a choice. Will you continue to be liked and unseen? Or will you risk being misunderstood in order to finally be known? The answer only you can decide. But know this, the moment you stop performing and start aligning, the world around you shifts. Some doors will close, but better ones will open. Ones that lead not to comfort, but to freedom. If something in you stirred today, drop a comment. Not for me, but maybe for someone else who needs to read it. You never know how your story might become someone else's turning point. And if you felt seen here, if these words felt like a mirror held gently to the parts you've hidden, stayed silent about, or simply forgotten, then stay. Not because you have to, but because something in you is ready to remember. You are not broken for wanting peace. You are not wrong for being kind. You simply no longer need to pay for connection with pieces of yourself. This space, this voice it's here for the ones waking up, the ones reclaiming their worth without apology, the ones rewriting the quiet rules they once lived by. So if that's you, you know what to do. Subscribe, not just to a channel, but to the part of you that's done performing. We're not here to be nice. We're here to be real, to be whole, to be free. And we're doing it together.